Good evening. The meeting is now called to order of the Grand Traverse County Parks and Rec Commission. Marilyn, will you please call the roll?
Bob Karstens.
Here.
Russell Clark.
Here.
Peter Doran.
Here.
Bill Dorier.
Here.
Al Larson.
Here.
Rebecca Cass is excused. Chris Taxbauer.
Here.
Kevin McEllier.
Here.
Dave Taylor.
Here.
All right, we'll begin the meeting with our first session of public comment. Any person is permitted to address the Park and Rec Commission. Under the Open Meetings Act, public comment shall be carried out with the following rules. Any person wishing to state the board, please come to the front table, be seated, and state your name and address. And then there's a limit of 3 minutes, which I can extend at my discretion. Is there anyone who would like to address the commission from the public?
I'm Ross Richardson, 873 Washington Street in Traverse City, and I am a Grand Traverse County Commissioner. You've been reading in the newspaper quite a bit about our budget crisis caused by a reduction in property tax revenue. Pursuant to that, the county board formed a budget ad hoc committee to review possible proposals for reducing expenditures this year. Not addressing next year's budget at this time. I would like to make clear, first of all, the county board is not asking for a budget reduction from Parks and Rec for this year. There was an original proposal on the table to cut $35,000 out of the Parks and Rec budget. That was rejected by the budget ad hoc committee and was actually validated by the whole county board at our Ways and Means meeting last night. It was rejected mostly for unfairly singling out one department. No other departments were being told they had to cut X amount of money actually throughout the county. Personally, I also believe that the crisis has been a little overstated, that we are not nearly in as bad shape as you might think reading the newspaper. By the time I got done, you have to look at the whole picture, okay? And if you only look at one narrow little thing, it can look bad, but in the whole picture, it's not really that significant, and we really have to wait until the whole year plays out before we know what kind of financial shape we're in. A proposal will probably be made later in this meeting to reduce the hours of operation of the swimming pool in hopes of saving money. And I would just like to state, from my vantage point, please be sure of your data. Please be sure that you know when the pool is used, when it generates revenue, that before you take any action, you have a good foundation. I would really hate to see you restrict public access to this valuable community resource. My impression, and believe me, since certain comments in the newspaper were made by commissioners about, we need to shut the swimming pool and so forth, my impression is there is strong public support for the swimming pool. I did not get one email or phone call that said, oh yeah, we're broke, get that swimming pool shut down as quickly as possible. At a time when public health is being threatened by a general lack of exercise, when there is an epidemic of obesity, when public school students, right here in Traverse City, may be denied access to sports because of the imposition of new pay-to-play fees, do we as a county really want to further limit access to healthy recreation? And it is the only public pool we have. It is a valuable resource, and I hope you do everything in your power to keep it to keep it operating. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else for public comment this evening? You are. All right. Next is special orders of business and presentations. First, Bob Carr, Agricultural Heritage Project.
That is my wife, Karen Carr. Hi. and she's going to pass something out to you, which you've probably all seen before. My name's Bob Carr, and
Thank you.
the exciting thing today is Bill Blevins is sitting back there. He's a college friend of ours. I went to school with him, and he's visiting. He's a very unique person in that he is a railroad expediter, and he makes sure that the most valuable things that go on railroads get to their destination without getting lost or on a sidetrack. So he had a little bit of a break. Tomorrow he's going to Norfolk, I believe, for something. But anyway, he's going to listen to my presentation. And so, well, you talked to me a little while, a month ago. I passed that out to you because this is your property. The lines are pretty close anyway. I got them in this building. I've been talking about doing an agriculture history project for a long time. I see it as a way to perpetuate our agriculture and save it from sprawl and so on. So a couple days ago, I went and visited with George McManus, Senator George McManus. Well, Senator George is my hero, and so is Clara, his wife. And so we talked because, as you know, he passed legislation, Mission Peninsula, you were able to purchase property, keep it in perpetuity, some big word there, and that kind of thing. And I told him I was going to do it. It's interesting, his son worked for quite a while out in this town of Watsonville where the Ag History Project was that I had worked with. So, you know, that generation did something really good for Grand Traverse County, you know, the McManus generation. And yesterday we stopped at the old school winery to see that building because I remember when it was a dump. So we went in there and looked around, and George McManus's book was there. And so we looked through that, and there's actually a picture of him in the schoolhouse up on the wall. But if you've never heard George tell about how he met his wife Clara, you just haven't had a full life. And if you ever get a chance to do that, have George tell you how he met Clara. So so now we have to think, we've taken care of Mission Peninsula. I'm different than most people. I've worked with volunteers all my life, and it's a real science. And there's lots of fanfare for lots of projects, and they never happen. Or if they do, they don't keep going. And so when I'm talking to you a lot of experience, and there's just a certain way we're going to have to do this. The reason I want you to look at this, and I don't know where the camera is hiding, I guess right there. You can come and look. That's 400 and how many acres?
400 and just about 420.
420 acres, and I think it was purchased for the small price of like $9 million. Is that right?
9.2.
$9.2 million. So in my mind, I've been thinking, if we're going to do an agriculture project up here, which will, for those who haven't heard this before, preserve history, agricultural history and agriculture land by educating the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth graders about agriculture. And what you do is you bring them out to a farm and you let them milk a wooden cow. And then you also let them grind corn, peel the apples, pick the cherries, pump the water in the old water handles, you know, in the thing, go on a hayride and do those kind of things. And what the Ag History Project that I worked out on the West Coast found out after 30 years that all these kids grew up and became city council and county commission people and served on boards like this. And agriculture is just king. And there is no sprawl, and there's not going to be any sprawl. And whatever is done in that county is done around agriculture. And if you want to know where it is, go to Meyer and look at Driscoll or any of the strawberry companies, and you'll see the name Watsonville, almost assuredly. If you see Watsonville, those are the good berries. And so what they found out was you can't move the weather. You've got to have a certain amount of fog. We had fog today. You know, that fog's for a reason. And I stopped and I took a picture of your barn and your farmhouse in the fog today for a reason. And so, but what happened with this agriculture history project, and I'm repeating myself a little bit, is pretty soon there became a need for a museum to demonstrate all the things that happen on a farm. And so at this property, they didn't have buildings, so they built a double-decker barn museum. And then they needed to talk about the family farm and the food and how you rang the bell and you bring the people in to feed for lunch and that kind of thing. So they moved a farmhouse in 4 pieces and set that up. And then they decided they needed to show how restoration of old carriages and wagons and so on. And so they built another barn, and now they built another barn. Now we're building our 3rd barn. So wouldn't it be nice if we didn't have to do that? So I'm driving along, not exactly recognizing the property, because I remember the farm across the street. There was big barns. They're gone because somebody, instead of preserving them, tore them down, and I just didn't recognize the property. But Karen saw the sign, and we pulled in there, and it said preserve, and found out that Parks and Recs had this property. The difference between most opportunities and this one is that we already have the barn, we already have the farmhouse, we already have a steel building. So you could easily entertain elementary kids and start out very simply teaching them about agriculture. And then as you expand, you can start having restoration projects go on, and you can do all kinds of things. So what I've prepared for you today is a reflection book. And I want you to look at it. Some of the people that I've talked to have the opinion that Bob Carr needs to go farm a 501c3, start a new project, and go out there and do this. And I'm not sure it's necessary. And I want you to think about this. Parks and Recreation, I don't know what it all stands for, but this I know, that they have a great interest in parks and they have a great interest in recreation. And I like living parks. And so this Ag History Project would be a living park. And I can tell you, going through a corn maze or pumping water with an old hand pump sure would be good recreation. And so it might be simpler that this project take place right through the Parks and Recreation program. Now, how are we going to fund this thing? Well, the Agriculture History Project that I was involved in has a paid director, but the rest of the people are volunteers. And I got to tell you about those volunteers. The volunteers in charge of that pump handle comes faithfully, and you cannot take that pump handle out of them. That is their kids, that's their job, and the volunteers are dedicated, and they've been doing it for 15 or 20 years, every one of them. And so if you work with volunteers right, they'll become volunteers for a lifetime in a project. So how do you fund this thing? Well, let's see, we have to go build buildings. Well, we don't. The barn is already there. Now, the barn at the moment, I have no clue as to what it needs done if you were to use it. But if you don't use it, it is what we call atmosphere, because without a barn and without a farmhouse, you don't have a farm. So the farmhouse is there, and I've been through it several times, and what a wonderful building to have a volunteer center. Now, unfortunately, for the last I don't know how many years, since the farmers have moved out, the heat has not been on, the wallpaper is curled and those kind of things, and that will have to have some attention, and that's because of lack of attention. But the house is solid. It has the real beams underneath it are 2-inch, not 1.5. The electric lights come on, and it would make an excellent visitor center. So the volunteer center, so the volunteers have a place to meet, get ready for the program for the day, social lives, and that kind of thing. Then you got the steel building. Right now it's being used by Parks and Recs for their equipment, and you may need to continue to do that. However, it gives you something to think about in getting restoration programs going and start making agricultural displays and having a museum. I mean, you just got the basics that most places have to build. Now, why did I get interested in this property? Because I was looking for a farm. I didn't know who owned this farm. But if I was looking for a farm, I wanted it to do more than just teach elementary kids. I wanted to involve families, and I also wanted it to involve the tourist trade. And I just happen to know that US 31 is the highway that people used to take up the Straits of Mackinac clear to Florida. That's our big conduit from the Straits down into Traverse City. That's our tourist route. So here we have this wonderful farm right on the tourist route trade, so that we can take and give them the opportunity to enjoy ag history, and meanwhile maybe help us support ourselves. And so I think it is just a wonderful opportunity, and I'm just willing to be involved in it. I'll just say one more thing, and then I want Karen to pass these to you. The way that I do get projects to work is that I go around and I just visit everybody and get them all on the same page. If we are looking for a volunteer base, there are all kinds of opportunities out there. There's 4-H, Future Farmers, Extension, university, high school. We can go on, art people, because, agriculture art's very important. Have those kids do that agriculture art and then have it displayed, all kinds of things like that. And so the real secret to this whole thing, though, is you already have the barn, you have the farmhouse, you have the property in between that stands alone from everything else. It doesn't have the jurisdictions the other parts of the property have, and it's almost like turnkey. Now, I would like to see it grow from that, and I put it in the book, so maybe rather than talking. But my first instinct was, let's have a corn maze. So the Sens, I know them. I buy propane from them and that kind of thing. So I asked Marty about it. Yeah, we're planting corn. Well, what if we put a path through your corn, and we can make some money off of it to support a program, then you can harvest the corn, and, whatever you lose, we can make that out of the kitty, And so I think it's something that's very powerful, and because they're already planting corn, something we could do this year as well. But I mean, there is all kinds of things. Where the Ag History Project was, that town took empty lots and had community gardens, and for $40 or whatever they charged, a person had a plot of ground and they had a garden. And you may want to do that. A lot of people would love to have a garden and have no place to have a garden. Wouldn't that be fun? I remember as a kid going to a barn theater for John Deere days, where they spent all day and they showed old movies about John Deere's and all this kind of thing. It was chairs on a high-rise in a barn. Pretty fun. Well, if you want to bring the kids in and it's raining, you can put them up there in these things, and we talk to them about cows and where milk comes from. And so that barn may never house animals. And the other thing you can do is you can have animals. You can have art fairs. You could have old engine shows. You could have something every weekend out there, which would really be fun. Yesterday, I was asked to go and talk to the Conservancy, and I'm just going to jump here real quick, because they have this farmhouse that's sitting empty. They're wondering what to do with it. What we did in the big farmhouse that we moved out at Ag History was, we turned it into a museum with all the old furniture and pictures of old farmers and all that kind of stuff. But then it was rented out to groups to have catered farm suppers. And it's just a big, big success. And the different caterers and the different restaurants, can take different days, make some money, and we make some money. So I suggested that might be something you should think about, so that when we do our farm history program, we can perhaps come over, and if they want to, and tour the farmhouse. Meanwhile, put this to use and start generating money. I keep thinking about $9.2 million. And that property is just sitting there. And people gave money in good faith, and they did it for the preservation of that farmland and farming and all that kind of stuff. So, hey, I think we're already started. I really believe that the kind of things we're working on here will be something that will fit people who are living and who have passed on, who gave money. I'm going to give this to you, and just say this one more time. You've got someone here that knows how it works, and there's phone numbers of people that are involved in Ag History projects. You have the barn, you have the house with the lights that will come on, and you have that building and all the property there, where we could start doing educational things in the fall. We could start having family picnics. We could start having all that kind of pumpkin days, and maybe a corn maze as soon as this year, depending on what you decide. You have the barn, you have the farmhouse, and you have that property. And all the rest of it around to do whatever we ever decide to do. Rather than say any more, I want Karen, would you pass these out? And then I was asked, would I have a business plan? Well, the business plan is this. You have the farmhouse, you have the barn, you have this building, you have the property. We do need to do something to the farmhouse, because I think we need a volunteer center sooner than later. Now, I can go out and raise the money to do it, or maybe you have a little money in your treasury. Now, I do a lot of pictures, because pictures say 1,000 words, so you're going to see pictures. The first section there is to illustrate the importance of the farmhouse having a farmhouse and a barn. And unlike the one across the street, the farmhouse that Parks and Rec's owned is the classic old farmhouse. As you go through these pictures, you almost think they're identical. And then I talk about what you can do with the critters. They're so much fun. And maybe 4-H kids, whoever, you can have them maintain them. Maybe we don't have critters, maybe we do out there. We have goats and we have sheep and we have chickens. Chickens are very important. Kids love chickens and that kind of thing. And so I don't have one of my books here. Karen, do you have one? I don't even remember what I put in there now. And so I use pictures to illustrate rather than just about anything else. So you see pictures of the farmhouse and the animals. You know, they're so much fun. Restoration program. You know, it can be all the different equipment, and people can come and watch it being done through volunteers. One of the things that Grand Traverse County is blessed with is surrounding enthusiasts for the restoration of equipment. We got Buckley and we got Walloon Lake, two of the major old equipment restoration groups in the United States, one on each side of us. I talk about agriculture outreach. That means we can go do parades and do those kind of things. And I have...
There's no doubt that we understand that we have a valuable piece of property, and I understand the assets that we have out there.
Right.
What is it? It's also a piece of property that we obtain through grant money that has numerous restrictions, that and compliance with law is required by this government body. What exactly are you asking of us tonight?
Right now, I'm suggesting that we take the barn, the farmhouse, and the property down to the red building, and maybe a corner of the red building, and start preparing that to be our education center for agriculture history for the young kids, and any programs we want to have take place around that, which could be family picnics, it could be that kind of thing. And also, number 2, maybe talk to the Sens about corn maze, because that's immediate money. That way, we take the burden off of, they've already given $9.2 million. That's a lot of money. What if we can make this so it pays for itself? Wouldn't that be just wonderful? And still accomplish some of the goals they have. Now, to do a business plan, got to know the restrictions. We do believe, in talking with the Conservancy and Jason, that we have a good chance that there are no restrictions on the property of the barn, the farmhouse, and down to the red building. And so if that's the case, then the restrictions or the opportunities are what you decide. Now, why am I doing this? It's the last thing I needed to do, except that I have the knowledge, I have the experience, and you have the property that I would have died for if I was going to draw up what I would want and where I'd want to put an agriculture history project in Grand Traverse County or in the Fruit Belt. You just so happen to be the landlords that have it. So I have to come to you. And so in the back, I am suggesting that rather than have to do everything to the board, we need to know the restrictions so we can have a long-range plan, but we also need to do the short range. And the short range is we want to do an education program, I believe, for the elementary students utilizing volunteers. And I believe that the volunteers need a place, and I think that farmhouse, and I've got a diagram in there of how I do it. You can shut off the upstairs for now. It would be just ideal. Plus, it keeps the farmhouse valuable, as well as having the barn and the other stuff. Yes, sir.
Is this a for-profit or nonprofit?
I think it would be a nonprofit. If it comes through Parks and Recs, I think you're a nonprofit. There are farms that operate petting zoos and stuff for profit. I've never envisioned it that way. I envision it as a nonprofit. I think it's really, really exciting to get volunteers to be involved in agriculture, because they got grandkids, they got kids. And it just becomes this rolling addition upon addition of awareness and love, and it's pretty hard not to love agriculture when you stand out there and you can see Lake Michigan, and there's Elk Lake over here, and you got the slough with all the birds, and it's a real farm. It's just, as I said before, If I was to go look all over the world for a place to do it, you just happen to own the farm because you're on the tourist corridor. I look at tourism as they deserve a piece of the attraction as well, plus they can help finance. And tourism, I ran Mackinac Chamber of Commerce, and we had a saying, if a tourist goes on a trip and he comes home with any money in his pocket, he doesn't believe he had any fun. People like to spend money on attractions, especially for their kids, and they don't have a problem paying a fee to go through a corn maze. If we said you all go through for free, it's not nearly as much fun sometimes, because it's fun to give. It's the way volunteerism works. Successful volunteerism, there is always a responsibility, there is always a cost, whether it's a soup kitchen or anything else. And so what I think is maybe Al, and we should have the county commissioner and a couple other people get our heads together and let's talk about it more and get the restrictions, see if there's any restrictions. Let's keep it simple. Start with the very basics. And that is the barn as backdrop till we look at it. The farmhouse, let's see if we can't get the main floor so it's legal and become a volunteer center. And meanwhile, I can go out and I can talk to the restoration groups and alert them that we're going to want some of their work, that we're going to want to borrow some of their equipment. We don't have to buy their equipment. On loan, which rotates your museum and doesn't cost us a dime for part of the atmosphere and demonstration. And we'll go to the 4-H and Farm Bureau and all this. Now, before I ever came to you, I talked to the president of the Farm Bureau. And told him what I was thinking of doing. I'd like to see 4 or 5 of them in the state. But the most important is Grand Traverse, is the 10-county region where we have our fruit belt, or down in Berrien County in that area where they have their fruit belt. But we are really the cherry capital, and I feel it's number 1. So why not be first?
Well, I'm certainly willing to continue the conversation. I hear your vision, I hear your enthusiasm, but to me, the devil is in the details on getting from A to B, and the road is just fraught with obstacles, and sometimes those obstacles are deal breakers. I mean, they can't be overcome, or to overcome them takes a ton of work and a ton of coordination. That's the part that makes me uncomfortable with.
Let me ask you, from the barn to the farmhouse, over to the red building, what is one of the big obstacles you think there exists?
The actual condition of the house, the actual condition of the barn, the liability of the county.
Liability, that's 1960s talk here now.
I don't think so.
Liability is when you shut off the heat and let the house molt. That people gave to see history, and I don't want to lecture here, but I know what they did. They gave to see agriculture preserved, the barns, the buildings preserved, so not just the land. All right? And so there is a responsibility to preserve these. But second of all, I've redone a couple of houses, more than one. That house is in really good condition. And so
Excuse me,
to answer your, well,
This is more appropriate, I think, if we have it in the context of the Mission Bay master plan or future development or the DNRE plan. Citizens make suggestions, ideas, some good, some bad. I think we just ought to refer it to Jason, and we have other items of business on the agenda today, and I think we've devoted
all
enough
right,
time to this one.
I'm going to wrap it up this way then. I think Jason has enough on his plate. Why don't we take Al, who's the president, take Christine, Max Bauer, and a couple others. Let's get together. Let's find out, put down all the obstacles that might be, all right? And just see what they are and what all the opportunities are. See what they might be and see where we are. And this is not just another project. There was $9.2 million spent for agriculture preservation, and I'm not talking about doing an art fair. I'm not talking about, those are the things you do to generate money and to use the property in addition. Yeah, are you raising your hand, Ms. Bauer?
Yes. I'm certainly willing to meet with Mr. Carr and with Jason and to further explore this. I think it's a wonderful vision, but, when I grew up, my grandfather's farm, it was where Myers is right now. Mm-hmm. And He used to take me over to the barns over at the state hospital when I was little, and I would go through
Yes.
see the cows, and I mean, it was wonderful. And so I can sort of feel, a little bit of your excitement and your vision, and I think it's a wonderful vision, and I think it's worth exploring. Are we going to do it here tonight? No.
No.
But I'm certainly willing to take the time and look at it if you are.
Commissioner Dwyer?
Yeah, just one quick question. I really appreciate your effort that you've put into this, and I think all of us are interested in this.
Good.
Is it part of your vision? Do you think it would be possible to get the basics going purely on volunteer help and donations?
Yes.
You think that's
Oh, absolutely.
entirely part of the, okay.
Yes, and I can list projects that I've done. It's amazing what you can do with no money if you have vision. I tell people who are trying to preserve history, don't even worry about the money. If you have the right vision, the money's there. And money can be in kind, whether it's labor, equipment, whatever.
Cows.
Yes. Now, I will say, we don't have cows out at the Ag History Museum, nothing with manure, but do you have a question?
Commissioner Clark?
Yes, thank you. This falls in line with what the master plan is for Maple Bay property. It's something that was discussed when the Conservancy spearheaded the whole effort to purchase this property, and it is something that I think we should encourage a follow-through, continued discussion. I'd be willing to volunteer on a committee to help with that process. I'm a firm believer that we need to preserve the educational or the agricultural heritage for the future generations who do not have any idea where milk really comes from or how it gets there.
And it will help me because I'm hamstrung right now because I just don't know what the restrictions are, and I don't want to be going off ahead of Jason, because he's charged with doing it right. And the Conservancy, they raised $9.2 million. What a talent. I think about that. I don't know how they did it. But on the other hand, we each have our talent. So I thank you all very much. I see faces here like Peter who are still involved. They're heroes of mine when you're up here doing what you're doing. And I just can't let this one go by. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, does anyone want to make a motion towards pursuing? Commissioner Max Bauer.
I'll make the motion that the Parks president form a committee to explore this further.
I'll support that. And I'd like to volunteer to be on that committee.
All right, discussion? All right, the motion is to have the Parks President form a subcommittee to explore an agricultural heritage farm at the Maple Bay property. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, on the committee then, I have volunteers right now of Clark and Taylor and Max Bauer, is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else like to be on that subcommittee? All right, I'll go ahead and attend. I'll be a part of the subcommittee as well so that I can keep tabs on the progress then. All right, so it'll be a 4-member subcommittee, and could I have a volunteer to chair that subcommittee? Thank you, Commissioner Max Bauer, you're appointed the chair. All right, thank you very much.
We're going to get Bill off to an airplane. Thank you very much.
All right, next item of business is action on the consent calendar. We've all been through this drill before, so prior to that, are there any additions to the agenda? Commissioner Max Bauer.
I would move to add the Driftwood Palace at Maple Bay and the pool RFQ to the agenda, please.
All right, first request for addition to the agenda is the Driftwood Palace. Do I have a second for that?
I support.
All right, supported by McKellier. All in favor of that addition to the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that's added as new business item number 2. And it's been proposed to add pool
Driftwood Palace and RFQ.
Pool RFQ to add to the agenda. It'll be under old business. Is there a second for that?
I second that.
Perrier seconds. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. It's added as number 4 under old business. All right, any other additions to the agenda? Commissioner Clark?
I would like to give an update on the Civic Center master plan.
All right, I'll second that. Update to the Civic Center master plan. Any discussion? All in favor of that addition to the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. That'll be added as number 5 under old business, Civic Center master plan. All right, any other additions to the agenda this evening? All right, hearing none. All right, under the receive and file, we have Scholarship Committee, Rules Committee, Finance and Budget Committee, 2011 Budget Report, communications from Beverly Bagwell and Carl Defoe, and Parks Commission meeting per diem. Additionally, we have approval of the Parks and Recreation Commission minutes from our April meeting. Is there anyone that would like to remove any items from the receive and file and the approvals? All right, hearing none. I move that we receive and file and approve the list as is printed in the agenda. Do I have a second?
Support.
Supported by McKellier. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, under old business, Meyer property.
That would be me. First of all, Jason, thank you for this information. I've been, as I've said before, on this subject every year for years. We now have some real information here, and so I'm going to start by making a motion that we ask the Parks Director to contact the Meyer family regarding their property and ask them what their preference is to do with their property, and that we not charge them for storage of their property.
Could I ask, you're referring to personal property and not
Personal
real-
property, yes, thank you for that clarification. Thank you. Yes,
I'm sorry.
they're tractors. I could,
I missed some of the words. Have the Parks Director contact the Meyers and...
the Meyer
and-
family, the Meyer heirs,
And ask them,
and ask them what they would like to do with their personal property, and that we not charge them for storage of their personal property. Because clearly they own 2 tractors.
Mr. Chair, I support the motion.
Can I,
all right, motion is for the Parks Director to contact the Meyer family heirs and ask them what they would like to do with the personal property. Do you want me to include the stuff about the storage in the motion?
Yes, I don't
Okay.
want to charge them for storage of their
With-
tractors.
Ask them what they would like to do with the personal property.
And that the county not charge them for storage of their tractors.
Okay. Grand Traverse County not charge them for storage tractors. All right, seconded by McKellier. All right, discussion. Commissioner Carsons.
at the last meeting, you made mention of the fact that this particular suggestion wasn't germane to our strategic plan. So I'm just trying to place, this could be important, I guess, to the extent if it was used to help us with our budget deficit, but could the proceeds from the sale of these objects be devoted to reducing the budget deficit, or would it have to be used on something connected with the way the Meyer property has been developed?
First, Commissioner Maxmeyer.
Commissioner Carstens, what I'm referring to are the 2 tractors that clearly are owned by the Myers family, not any of the other stuff. According to the memo that we have, The Myers family still owns a 1973 David Brown tractor valued at $5,200 and a 1950 Ford 8N tractor with pulley valued at $3,400. That was never personal property turned over to the county. My motion is simply to contact the heirs, the Myers family, and ask them what they would like to do with their property, those two tractors. This has nothing to do with anything else on the property.
Okay, but regardless of that, right now, Jason is dealing with all the rest of the things that are already in the strategic plan that are on his plate, and then Kim Moore is on a sick leave, and so he's trying to deal with her absence and things like that. And so, to the extent that this is really germane and important and needs to be done immediately, I think that's great. But if it isn't that important and we have other things that have a higher priority, I'm wondering why we are even thinking about it at this particular time. But maybe I'm off base, so I don't know. I'm just wondering, because you did make a remark at the last meeting to the extent that we had you had other elements that were important that connected with their strategic plan that remain to be dealt with. So I'm just wondering.
Commissioner Doran?
It's a good point. Christine, would you mind amending the motion, or if there has been a motion, or the suggestion to, instead of Jason, ask Mr. Brown, Facilities Management, to contact the Myers? It seems to be more within...
Not a problem at all. I'd be more than happy to.
Within his purview.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chair, I support the amendment.
Okay, the amendment then is to remove the words Parks Director and to replace them with Facilities Director. And the motion to amend was supported by McKellier. Discussion on the amendment.
I think it was a friendly amendment.
I'll just follow my little brown book.
Stick to the rules.
I didn't hear that, but
Great.
Commissioner Dwyer.
Yeah, I just have a comment overall. I think it's a good idea to move this process forward. I don't think it's a good idea for this body to make motions like this, directing our director with that much specificity to take actions. I think we can just make this known that we'd like for this to move forward and leave it at that. Just my comment.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right, so voting on the amendment to replace Parks Director with Facility Director, to contact the Meyer family heirs, ask them what they'd like to do with the personal property that was not given to Grand Traverse County, and that Grand Traverse County not charge for the storage of that personal property. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion's carried. Now,
Okay.
on the motion, any further discussion on the motion? Commissioner
no.
Maxwell?
I wasn't done with the subject. That
Right.
was just,
The motion has been amended and approved. Now
I'm
we're
sorry.
continuing
You're
our
right.
discussion
You're
on
right, Brown Book, okay.
the motion of the
I'm with you.
of whether we're going to go ahead and approve
All right.
the new motion. All right. My comments to you, Bob, are that I was pointing out that our discussion last month about having all the rest of the stuff that Grand Traverse County owns auctioned off was a determination of a strategic direction for that park. I feel that this motion is about the equipment the property that we don't own, and therefore doesn't alter the way that the strategic plan for that park would go. It's a first step to moving that out to decide, what happens next with that, and the other question about what to do with that property still would be hanging in the air. All right. Hearing no other discussion then, motion, once again, that the Facility Director contact the Meyer family heirs and ask them what they would like to do with the personal property, and that Grand Traverse County not charge for storage of the tractors. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, fee structure.
No,
I'm sorry,
I wasn't done yet.
please, continue.
I'm sorry. The next thing I would like to do is address the equipment that is left in the barns and the hay. And I understand if the Parks Board votes no, but I'm going to make the motion anyway. I would move that we direct staff, be it facilities or parks, to auction off the rest of the personal property that we were left from the Meyer estate.
All right, the motion is to have Grand Traverse County staff auction off the rest of the personal property on the Meyer estate. Is there a second for the motion? A second?
Also, I'll support it for discussion. I'd like to discuss, can we do that? Are there restrictions on doing that? Number one. Number two, it's already been voiced, is this an immediate priority now? So I support the motion for discussion to understand those elements. So first of all, are we able to auction off all the items? Are there any restrictions on auctioning off any of those items?
I've checked with Bob Cooney and with the county administrator, and to my knowledge, based upon my conversations with them, there are no restrictions. And, you know, I'm making the motion to auction. I'm not saying when. Please note that. And I understand if the Parks Board says no, but I have felt for many years that that stuff needs to go. And so.
Commissioner Doran?
Before a public body sells off anything, almost anything, they have to have a declaration of surplus status, that it's not needed for the governmental operation of the parks or facilities. And I am not going to vote for this because I think we should get some kind of a declaration of status of it, whether it's surplus or not, before we authorize any sale of it.
Commissioner Karstens?
Someone mentioned last time, I think, about a potential appraisal to find out whether or not there were things of real value in it. But regardless of that, Mr. Clark mentioned the danger element of the hay, and it seemed to me, I've heard about that spontaneous combustion that can take place when something like that is stored, and so I think that possibly, to me, that is one of the most important things, maybe to have that removed. And it seemed to me Mr. Purdy said that they could utilize that hay in their operations at the Grand Traverse Conservation, at the Nature Education Reserve. So I don't know if bringing that up in conjunction with Chris's motion is impertinent, and so I should wait and say something about that subsequently. But those were all elements that were included in the discussion last month about this property and what to do with the things in the barn. So.
Okay. Commissioner Taylor, did you have something?
I just was thinking the same thing Bob Carson's was, if that's a hazard, that hay should be removed, regardless if we do an auction or not.
Commissioner Clark?
Yeah, I would agree that getting the hay out of the barn, there are some items that are still on the property that have some real antique farm equipment type value that could perhaps be rolled into an ag educational program on another property, that I would just assume make sure we don't auction off something that we could use in another venue with Parks and Rec. And so we should make some determination at some point, if it is ever to be auctioned off, what should be kept for future consideration from a historic standpoint for agricultural purposes.
Okay. Commissioner Taylor, did you have more?
I just thought maybe putting it off until we investigate more into this project here, in case there's something that could be taken out here. And
Sure.
But I still think the hay should be removed from the building.
Okay. As I understand it, the hay could have come from one of two places. One is that it belongs and was harvested by somebody not a Meyer, and that there has been an arrangement that they could store the hay in there. The other is that hay has been sitting there since the property was acquired back in 2002, 3.
Earlier than that.
And nobody has the hay, and it's simply rotting and is a hazard. I am not sure how to prove the negative that nobody owns the hay, except that if nobody's taken the hay out in in a few years, then I'm going to say
We
that
own it.
nobody wants the hay, and that we should certainly rectify that quickly. The motion on the table, though, is to auction off the rest of the personal property for the Meyer estate. Any further discussion on that motion? All right. My opinion stays the same. In a perfect world, we would clarify our strategic plan for that park, and I would love to be able to do that quickly. I'm personally feeling overwhelmed as a body by the numerous issues that are there, and I would love to do this, and I understand the need to rectify this. I'm just not sure it can get there from here. That's my opinion. Once again, any further discussion? All right. All in favor of auctioning off the rest of the personal property on the Meyer estate, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
All right. Motion fails. All right. Any other motions, Commissioner Maxbauer?
No, that's it.
All right, then, I guess for the purposes of clarity, I'll make a motion that we achieve, that we do something with the hay. How about this, that we offer the hay to the Grand Traverse Conservation District,
Or the Nature Education Reserve.
I'll support
whatever the right words are on that one. Who's the right words to offer it to?
I'm sorry.
Nature Education Reserve, yeah.
Okay.
Bob's right.
Offer the hay to the Nature Education Reserve,
I'll support that.
and supported by Taylor. Any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. The hay will be offered to the Nature Education Reserve. All right, next item, Easling Pool Operations.
Fee structure.
Fee structure.
I'm sorry, you're right. I thought I already said that one. Which I did. All right,
Just
fee structures.
sliding on
Yeah, exactly. All right, fee structures, Jason.
As outlined in our last meeting with a variety of different motions that this commission made, I think there were 6 motions in total. I've presented to you in this packet a fee structure based on those proposals, or based on those motions, excuse me, realigning our Howe Arena Civic Center, Twin Lakes, Bassett Island, Easling Pool, including memberships, with the exception of seniors. And I've moved all of those fees to a 4-tier system associated with government entities and within Grand Traverse County and public bodies for Tier 1. Tier 2 being nonprofit organizations with a 501c3 status. Tier 3 being nonprofit organizations without 501c3 status and individuals. And Tier 4 are for-profit organizations, corporations, businesses, and revenue-generating organizations. I've also included kind of an outline that got misshuffled in putting these packets together. Page 54 should actually be page 52, 52 should be 53, et cetera. With a brief explanation, and this is very much a rough draft in giving an explanation to anybody that picks up our user fees to identify, for them to identify and figure out which tier they would fall into associated with the fees related to our facilities and parks. I also took the liberty of, within memberships for the pool, this commission suggested approximately 10% increase. One of the things I did, I took the liberty of creating a 20% increase as well, based on the feedback we received from several patrons when there was discussion from the County Board of Commissioners for cutting the pool. We had several of our patrons state, in fact, I would say the majority of the comments I got, they mentioned that they would be willing to pay even more for their membership in order to cover some of the costs associated with the pool, thus generating additional revenue. So for the commission's, just I guess to play devil's advocate, I've also proposed in the shaded section what that 20% increase would be for budget issues. If we were to implement these fees in beginning July 1st, 2011, the 20% increase, each 10% increase we have in memberships would generate approximately $4,300 in revenue, additional revenue for the pool for the remainder of the year. So just to give the commission an idea, in raising these membership fees, we would foresee a $4,373 approximate increase per 10% raised for the remainder of 2011.
Commissioner Doria?
Help me remember where we're at with this now. We voted on each of those individual motions, correct? So these fee changes have been voted on and approved by this body, is that correct?
Yes, we voted on to increase the fees and by about how much.
Okay.
And what he's bringing to us then is the numbers.
Do we, Mike, I guess my real question is are we going to vote again, or are we headed towards another vote? The reason I'm asking that is, I think we did great work. I think particularly you put a lot of time into this. If we've already increased those fees, I think we ought to sit where we are and just strategically look for other opportunities. I'm really interested in some fundraising, particularly for Easling Pool. We're going to have a presentation here, hopefully at our next meeting, about some ways to do that. And maybe there are other alternatives rather than going 20%, 30%, whatever. So I'm just looking for a little direction from you. What are we doing with this tonight? Are we going to re-vote or are we done?
What I would like to do is I would like to make a motion here shortly to approve the fee structure as presented so that we are saying as a board that yes, the numbers that Jason pulled out reflect the wishes of the commission from last month.
Okay.
And then the stamp is there for what we've got. I would love to move to a position where the commission doesn't have to approve every 50-cent change in the daily pool fee and that type of stuff, but I'm not sure we're there yet. So being a structure guy, I'll go with a commission stamp, yay or nay, on the numbers that he's presented. First questions?
The numbers, that means for both pages, correct? For the Howe Arena and the Civic Center, Twin Lakes, and Bassett Island.
Right.
I don't have a
As well
motion
as the
yet,
pool.
but the motion that was recommended was to approve the fee structure with the exception of the pool fees, and I'm not, but we can make,
Okay.
that was just Jason's recommendation. We can either move to approve the first page or both pages.
And can I just clarify? My recommendation is to approve the fee structure as presented with the exception of the membership fees, but also for this commission to discuss whether they would like that 10% increase in the membership fees or the 20% increase or some variation thereof. But I'm just wanted to update this commission with the several positive comments we got in relation to closing the pool. People would rather pay an additional fee. And so I am looking for, I would hope for a motion from this commission approving the entire thing. It's just how to approve those membership fees. That's something I'd like to leave up to this commission.
Okay. Commissioner Doria.
For the sake of moving this on, I'll make that motion that we approve the entire fee structure package, including a 10% increase in memberships for Easling Pool.
Support. Support.
All right. McKelvey was closer to me and the sound reached my ear first. So All right, it's been moved to approve the fee structure as presented on the entire fee structure with the 10% membership increase to the pool. We've had a second on that discussion. Commissioner McCarty.
I just want to add, and why I support this, I believe it's always best to gradually increase the fees regularly and in minor increments rather than not monitor it and all of a sudden you've got to do a big jump of 20%. So hopefully, when was the last fee increase?
2008.
Okay, so I'm in favor of gradually phasing in regular increases rather than irregular large increases. That's why I support the 10%.
All right, was there another comment? Okay. The motion is to approve the fee structure as presented with the 10%, with using the 10% column on the pool membership fees.
I have a question.
Yes.
Will this increase be effective immediately?
July 1st,
July 1st?
correct?
That's what I would recommend, July 1st. That way we do have an opportunity to let our users know.
All right. I can go through the entire Roberts procedure for July 1st. Is there anyone that has an objection to using July 1st? Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Then implementing all these fees effective July 1st. Pete?
Are there any other fees associated with the Civic Center, Jason, besides these here, the meeting rooms and the equipment and the pavilions? The band shell, is there?
The band shell, we incorporate the band shell into the pavilion.
Okay.
Because they're so close together.
Okay. Is this a comprehensive list of the different fees we charge?
This is not a full list of the fees. These are just the items that the commission made motions on last month.
Okay, thank you.
So for instance, we didn't change the fees for the rental of fields, athletic fields, those remain the same, and
That's right.
others remain the same. And then, is it fair to assume that any group that has already reserved something would be essentially grandfathered under the rates under which
That's
they
correct.
reserved? Okay. All right, any further discussion or questions? Okay. All in favor of the motion to approve, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion's carried. Do you need me to read that again, Marilyn, or are you good?
No, I've got it.
Great.
Thank you. I just, was it McElliey that seconded that?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
All right, Easling Pool Operations.
Okay, that would be me. Thank you. As you're all aware, on May 4th, a county board ad hoc committee got together and took a look. First of all, I'll give you a little bit of history. Grand Traverse County found out that we are $712,000 shy in our revenue projections for 2011. This is on top of our anticipated spending of $625,000 out of fund balance. So we have to fill, we've already filled $625,000 of the 1.3 hole out of fund balance, but we still have to fill the other $712,000. And initially, at a May 4th ad hoc committee meeting of chairs of the Board of Commissioners committees, it was suggested that the Parks Department shave $35,000 out of their budget. And when I heard that, I had a discussion with several people as to how to keep the impact to the Parks Department at a minimum. And it was suggested to me, and I thought it was a reasonable suggestion, that we restrict the hours of the pool operations to save money. At that point, I asked for it to be put on the agenda. At a subsequent meeting, the ad hoc committee of commissioners said that, no, we're not going to single out the Parks Department. That cut does not necessarily need to take place. But at last night's Ways and Means Committee, I did ask the county board if there was consensus whether or not they wanted me to bring this subject forward to the Parks Department. And there was consensus that they did want me to bring this suggestion forward to the Parks Department, to the Parks Commission. I will tell you that, first of all, that when these discussions started, last Friday, there were 4 commissioners present speaking with the county administrator, and they were Commissioners Lemkool, Wheelock, Fleece, and myself. And the county administrator said that in his 2012 budget, he's going to recommend closing the pool. And it will not be in his proposed budget to the county board. I do not want to see that facility closed. And you know, I will be the first person to admit that part of it is personal. My husband is a master's swimmer. He ages up to 65 next year. And the hours right now work extremely well for him. He basically has a private facility from 2 to 4 in the afternoon, Monday through Thursday. And it works extremely well. So I bring this forward with a great deal of hesitation. But I think as a county commissioner, I have to bring it forward. What I am going to suggest the Parks Department, the Parks Commission consider is restricting the hours over the summer. What my goal is to demonstrate to the county board that the pool does not need to be closed. It can operate with restricted hours, and it can serve most of the public with restricted hours. If the pool is open in the mornings, it will serve, and this is in the summertime, please keep in mind, Breakers swims in the mornings, the high school swim team swims in the mornings, Coast Guard swims in the mornings, your master swimmers swim in the mornings, your lap swimmers swim in the mornings, your aerobics exercisers swim in the mornings. So, you know, it makes sense to give this serious consideration, just to show the county board that the facility does not need to be closed. It can operate with restricted hours. Now, if we do this, and believe me, it's not going to break my heart if the Parks Board says no. If we do this, I will tell you that in all likelihood, Kim Moore would be laid off, John Horton would be laid off, and Ron O'Brien would be laid off. Those are the 2 lifeguards and the aquatics director. But based upon my initial projections, which I've run by 1 county commissioner, and I got my numbers from Dean Bott, we would save approximately $45,000 this year. Now, we are at this particular point in time, as of May 12th, we have a county subsidy of approximately $74,000. We are well ahead of subsidizing the pool from last year as far as money. I mean, all of last year, the pool subsidy was $147,000, and I could discuss as to why that is. You know, for instance, we had, $16,000 in revenue that was counted last year that should have been counted in 2009. There are a number of reasons, but in any event, last year's county subsidy to Easling Pool was $147,000. This year, as of May 12th, we are at $74,000. And I truly do not want to see that facility closed. I believe that there are votes on the county board right now that will indeed close that facility in 2012. I want to take this opportunity to show the board that we can operate that facility cost effectively just by restricting the hours. So that's my proposal. I'm going to make the motion, and again, if you vote this down, I'm not going to go home crying. So I will make the motion that the Parks Board ask our Parks Director to work with the County Administrator to restrict pool hours during the summer.
Mr. Doran?
I need some other information, Christine, from Dean Bott, from personnel, as well as, and most importantly, I think, from Dennis Aloya, who's got the big picture responsibility as to whether this is appropriate insofar as actually saving money, and what would are your numbers correct? Do they agree with them or not agree with them as to what the savings would be before and I need that information before I could vote for a motion to reduce the hours.
Well, there's no support for the motion yet, so it may die.
We need to support before we have discussion.
Yes. Is there support?
I'll support for discussion.
Supported by Taylor, that the director work with county administrator to restrict the pool hours during the summer. Commissioner Dory, you're first.
Wait, can I?
Yeah, just to tag on with what...
Jason? I'm sorry.
I'd like just to clarify, when you say summer, how many weeks and when did you
Well,
take your figures from?
Before, let me just, I'm going to say something kind of similar to what you're saying, and also tag on to what Mr. Doran's saying. When Christine first brought this up, she said she's going to present details to the commission at our May meeting, and that's tonight. And we do need details before we can vote on something like this. Also, one of the key things that we're going to need to know is how many swimmers are using the pool in the hours now that you're anticipating closing it. And will they move to the earlier hours, or will they go away? We need to have some idea what kind of an impact this is. I've been watching the county commission discussions about the budget, and it is clear to me that there's really inadequate discussion that's going on about what our shortfall really is and what actions we really need to take. What I picked up from last night's meeting is we don't need to have budget cuts at this point in time. We had another commissioner who went out of his way to come here tonight to tell us that, to make sure that we heard that communicated clearly from the county commission to us.
Commissioner Taylor first.
Jason, can you explain to us the difference in the use from 6 in the morning till noon, and then from noon to close? Is a majority of the use in the morning? Is it?
That's why I asked the question about what weeks we were talking about, because if we're talking the summer and we're talking 3 months, I would give you a different answer than if we were talking about 10 weeks from the beginning of June to mid-August. There are some changes there. So just for me to better answer that question, Commissioner, do you have a specific window of dates? Because Commissioner Taylor, I'd love to answer your question, but I want to make sure I'm answering it properly.
I understand that you're not able to.
No, I can. It's just
Until we define May, June, July, or August, or how
Right.
long?
because we have a big change that occurs in the pool mid-August, and as that part of the summer, that's going to do some serious damage to the girls' high school swim team. So there's some changes there. There's some changes with our demographics of who utilizes the pool in specific months, with snowbirds and a variety of different things that go into it. So I need a better date to give a good answer with that. Typically, we have our younger people would swim in the afternoon. The older adults and older people typically swim during the day during the morning from 6 to noon. That time's typically taken up by lap swimmers, members, masters, and exercise.
Chairman?
Commissioner Max Bauer.
First of all, I want to address something that Commissioner Doyer said. Yes, Commissioner Richardson does disagree with myself and several other county board members. We spent last year, out of fund balance, approximately $800,000. Due to the Consumer Price Index, our revenue projections were $750,000 shy. Now, Commissioner Richardson and I disagree on whether you call that a $1.5 million hole. I call it a $1.5 million hole. He does not. We did make $750,000 approximately adjustments, budget adjustments. What we did is we took that money out of the Capital Improvement Fund and the Facilities Fund. So that money was budgeted for projects. We simply didn't do the projects. That's a one-time fix. That was in 2010. In 2009, we came up $600,000 shy in revenue due to interest rates, interest revenue that we did not receive, that we had projected. This year, we're $712,000 in a hole. And that is spending, along with spending, $625 out of fund balance. Now, I know Commissioner Richardson is more optimistic than I am. But one thing that every county commissioner will tell you is that we do need to make cuts next year. And I view this as an opportunity to demonstrate that Easling Pool does not need to be closed. And again, if you disagree with the motion, by all means, vote no. I have no problem with that.
Commissioner Carstens.
I'm just thinking of Kim Moore and the things that the hard work that she's done and the successful work she's done in creating enthusiasm and increased use of the pool. And the budget deficit certainly isn't her fault. And I heard Mr. Richardson say that's at least some on the county board are questioning the wisdom of making the pool be the whipping boy, so to speak, for this budget deficit. And I can't see the fairness in that either, and particularly her. She's done some really impressive things. She's come all the way across the country to work here, and to lay her off because we have a problem. There's a certain social fairness, justice that bothers me about this. I think that if there has to be some kind of cuts, the suffering should be evenly distributed. They shouldn't be laid on one particular department or people who've really worked hard to do some really good things that create the things that she's done. That I've seen them. The things that the result is people say, gee, the things that she's done make this a really cool place for families to come and raise kids. And I'm impressed with that. And so that she should be laid off for the quality of her work, that doesn't make any sense to me at all. If there's commensurate cuts throughout the system, throughout the county, that's fine, but why should she be singled out? That just doesn't quite sit well with me. So that's just a concern I have.
Commissioner McCalia?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. I think this is a valid exercise in light of a potential closing of the pool in 2012, that this is a valid exercise to pursue it. But I'm of the opinion right now that I want to make a motion to table this motion because I really need an analysis and presentation of the facts of the current pool usage before I can vote on this current motion. So we have a motion to table on the floor.
Motion to table, is there a second?
I'm going to support that.
Supported by Taylor. Discussion on the motion to table. Commissioner Maxmeyer?
Well, I'm opposed to the motion to table. I think we need to take a vote now, yay or nay. If it stays open, the same hours it is now, fine. If it doesn't, that's fine too. But if we table the motion until next month, it's not going to matter. It's going to be too late to do this. The impact, it will be minimal, in my opinion, in the summer versus any other time of year. So I'm opposed to tabling. I think we need to take the vote.
In response, Mr. Chair, I see the window of opportunity, okay, because I'm really hesitant until we can get the actual pool usage and who we're impacting. But now I see your point of the story, that if we table this, we're losing the window of opportunity in the summer months, June, July, and August, you're defining it. I guess I would rely on the director's analysis of what kind of impacts of June, July, and August and noon to thereafter, what percentage of users does that impact?
That's a tough question to just lay on somebody in a meeting like this.
Sure. These are tough times, yeah.
But he could give us a percentage, just off, something.
That's even a tough question to answer because it's different in August than it is July, than it is in June, than it is even in September.
Are we talking June, July, and August? And then is the pool in the afternoon empty in June and July? I guess that's a question.
The afternoon in any Parks and Recreation department, including ours, is always the toughest times. Commissioner Maxbauer stated her husband has essentially his own private pool from the hours of 2 to 4.
Right now, he does.
If you think about what your lives entail between 2 and 4 o'clock, especially if you have kids or when you had kids, you were wrapping up your work day, your kids were coming home from school, or you were getting out of work, or trying to get out of work to get your kids back to the pool for their activities. Historically, the 2 to 4 o'clock hours, always the most challenging to plan, and 2 to 4 is our slowest time in the pool, just based on the schedules that everyone else keeps.
Can you tell me when the pool closes?
The pool closes at 9:20 each night.
Commissioner Dwyer.
One thing I would want to throw out, Commissioner Richardson gave us some advice before he left, and that was before you do anything, make sure you know what your facts are. we don't have any facts here. I don't think we're in any position to vote for this. If Commissioner Maxbauer wants to go ahead and vote this thing yea or nay, I know how I'm going to vote.
I understand that.
Maybe we ought to do that, just to move it along.
Excuse me?
Commissioner John, or Jason, sorry.
I don't know if you guys frankly care about my thoughts on this situation, but I guess it's my job to, I don't know how you feel, what you feel my job is to this commission. I would suggest that Commissioner Richardson came and said that they're not asking for any cuts to the Parks and Recreation budget. And at one point, they had their eyes fixed on a $35,000 number. $35,000 would impact our department greatly, and specifically the pool, because it is our biggest expense. The motion has been made not to cut the swimming pool, or not to make a $30,000 or $35,000 cut in our department, because they're not asking any other department to. But in addition to that, this commission was proactive before this news broke of the budget shortfall in moving forward with creating a new fee structure that more closely aligned with some of the strategic plans that you guys have put together. And you're one of the few departments, if not the only department, that's being proactive this year. And being proactive by saying, we want to raise revenues effective July 1st. I've crunched some numbers. I would anticipate that making those changes as proposed, beginning July 1st, we'll see an approximate $14,000 increase in our revenues for this year. So that takes that $35,000 number that the commission was originally discussing and drops it down to $20,000. So it's a smaller drop in the bucket. It would be I guess it would be my recommendation that we not make these changes to the pool in 2011. In the event, and I would suggest that because it gives us time to address those union issues. It gives us time to give a proper analysis of the impact that hours would have to this commission, to the Board of Commissioners, and it gives us time to plan for that in 2012. It gives our employees time to plan in the event that they're being laid off. I think this Parks and Recreation Commission has done a lot to be proactive in raising the fees associated with all of our facilities to help shore up some of that budget shortfall. And you're one of the few departments, if not the only department or commission, that's taking these steps to be proactive. In addition to that...
No, you're not. Don't say that. Other boards have stepped up.
So this board has been the most active and the most proactive in realizing this, because this board also approved, and we didn't cut just $27,000 like we were asked to at the beginning of this budget year. We cut $50,000. So we were proactive before this budget year even began. And now you're being proactive again in adjusting these fees to increase revenues, which creates a smaller reliance on the general fund. It'd be my suggestion that we not move forward with this in 2011, but make it a serious consideration for 2012, because we'll be able to get those facts, those figures, that in any other decision that this commission makes, those details are important. And that would give us that opportunity to give you some stronger information associated with whether to keep the pool open, restrict the hours, or close it.
It's clear to me that the pressure will come. The budget process for next year is this summer. And so regardless of what we do at the moment, we're going to need to arm ourselves with the knowledge of how that pool functions and what some of the options can be to present rather than going all or nothing. One of the things we could do is we have a study session on the 2nd of June, during which we're going to receive a presentation about cost recovery. And so we could, I think, have a special meeting on that day to discuss, to do some of the analysis of what this is, with the consideration towards tabling it to June 2nd. It's an option that we could use rather than kicking it all the way till late June. Commissioner Maxbauer.
I would be in favor of tabling it till June 2nd. And Commissioner Carstens, I understand, but your viewpoint, and You know, life isn't fair. And am I going to cut a public health nurse? Am I going to cut a deputy sheriff? Or am I going to close a pool? You know, I understand your feelings. And please understand that what I'm trying to do is keep the facility open.
Commissioner Taylor?
I'd like to say that Al does a terrific job of running this. He's our chairman, and I don't think he needs Bill Dorrier's help running this meeting. That's my comment.
All right, the motion is on the table to, well, the motion is on the floor to table the motion to restrict the hours in the pool. Commissioner Dorian.
I'm going to vote against the motion to table because I sense that the main motion's going to fail, and I'm not in favor of that motion.
All right. All right, so we have the motion to table. All in favor of tabling this, the motion to restrict the hours of pool, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
All right, motion carries then. It's tabled. We'll place it on the agenda for the 2nd of June, the same question. Commissioner Carstens, did you?
No, I'm sorry, excuse me.
Are you okay?
I was speaking out of turn, thank you.
Okay. All right. Pool RFQ.
Driftwood Palace is next.
You put RFQ under new business, I thought.
Yeah, the intent was to put Driftwood Palace under new business,
Oh, I'm sorry.
and Pool RFQ is number 4 under old business.
That was, okay. The RFQ subcommittee did meet, and we gave the director our recommendation of changes to the RFQ. And Jason, what is the status of sending that RFQ out?
I have not even had a chance to look at that. Our aquatic manager's been on this is going on 5 weeks of leave, so I've been doing a full-time job as an aquatics manager, full-time job as a director. Because the pool is so important to be managed properly because of the safety aspects of it, I've focused my attention there. I've done nothing with this pool RFQ. Add to that the work associated with the possible budget cuts. I've done nothing with this.
I want to take this opportunity to stress that many of the county board members are looking for this RFQ to go out. And one of the things I want to let the Parks Commission know is the county administrator, as he explores ways to cut our budget for next year, is going to be putting out bids for many different services that the county does. And I just would encourage the RFQ to be sent out as quickly as possible.
All right, anything else
Nope.
on that? All right, Civic Center Master Plan, Russ.
Thank you for the opportunity to bring you an update on the master plan progress for the Civic Center. The existing facilities plan we reviewed and the site analysis plan we reviewed. The first drawing I'd like to review with you in detail is actually the master plan concept drawing, which you have a hard copy of, 11 by 17 copy. And taking the comments that you gave me in terms of your priorities at last month's meeting as compared to the public's recommendations in our input session that was held a month earlier, I've tried to assemble the recommendations to the master plan in the following manner. The perimeter fencing on Front Street at the very top of your drawing, physically removing the fence for about 880 feet, which is basically the center of the property. And the reason I'm recommending that is the existing wooden structure that exists at this location right here is right on the property line of the Civic Center. It's still in use for storage. It's the only wooden structure left over from the fairgrounds on the property at this point. And from there towards the corner, we get to the heaviest crossing of foot traffic coming into the property. And from a safety standpoint, I'm recommending that we at least retain a fence in that area only at 3 feet in height versus 6 feet. And the purpose of doing that is just to discourage anyone trying to, I guess, get to the corner in a different manner and perhaps jaywalk across that busy roadway near this and not utilize the traffic signal that's there. Yes, sir.
Russ, you have the phrase here, lower fence from 6 to 3.
Right.
That, you're not suggesting that it still be chain link fence, are you?
I am, in fact, from a cost standpoint, suggesting that we do that. Just literally cut off the top half of it. Lower the post stays in the ground.
Don't you think that looks like heck?
Well, yes, it does. But also, what would you replace it with that would be less obtrusive without being 4 or 5 times more expensive?
Don't they have that simulated wood, plastic material that doesn't need any maintenance that you could?
There are various degrees of product out there. From my experience, over time, it does degrade, it does sag, and does require maintenance. But, the aspect, this is one suggestion. I'm wide open to any other ideas you folks may want to incorporate.
I would prefer if your final product not mention materials there,
Okay.
because
Right.
it makes a big difference to me aesthetically. That's that's Front Street.
That's Front Street, okay.
That should look open and inviting.
Okay, well, the aspect that if you would prefer as a commission not to have any fence along the perimeter of the property on Front Street, I'm open to that, definitely. I'm most concerned in not eliminating a fence along Titus Street because of the proximity of the walkway and the actual flow of traffic.
I'm totally against having no fence at all.
I'm sorry?
I said I'm totally against having no fence in that
Okay.
area because of the children.
Okay,
Excuse me,
on
that
Front
traffic.
Street or any of the streets?
Well, Front Street's my main concern.
Okay, all right.
All right, Carson.
I kind of agree with Mr. Taylor. I thought that you suggested the possibility of some kind of, I was thinking of these really dense hedges that were in the neighborhoods that I've lived in when I've lived in town, that they weren't green in the winter,
Right.
but they were pretty dense. And if something was there to stop a ball, if a kids are impulsive, and if they're playing with a ball as they go around a walk or something, they're likely to chase it, and it might be too late. And whereas if you had some kind of a barrier there, like one of those dense hedges, that might prevent something like that from happening. And so
What I've recommended, where it shows 880 feet, is to actually replace that with a hedge of deciduous and evergreen shrubbery, perennials, and reintroduce some street trees along that property edge.
with the
And
cost,
create a barrier with specific openings connecting to the sidewalk of Front Street.
is that cost prohibitive?
It depends on the types of materials and the size that they're installed in. There are variables, but the aspect, this initial recommendation was based on trying to remove a fence altogether for a portion of it and replacing it with more of a green type of edge along Front Street. The other consideration was basically removing the fence from 6 feet and lowering it to 3 feet. It can be changed to consideration of a different type of fencing altogether over time. I'm fine with that, but I do think from a safety standpoint, we need fences near the walking trail where the roads are close to the trail itself. In the areas that we want to physically remove the fence as chain link, from an aesthetic standpoint, there are alternatives out there. It's just a matter of cost and the degree of per lineal foot cost you're willing to consider for that.
Jason, did you still have a question or comment?
No.
Pete?
I'm exactly on the 180 degrees from Dave. Unless there's a specific reason, like I see along Titus Street, where the ball going into the street can come, I would prefer not to have any fence at all. But if there's got to be a fence, have something that looks a little less industrial than a chain link fence. The one chart you got here, Russ, maybe you're going to get to this, has got the pickleball over on the maintenance lot by the maintenance
Yes, I
building.
would get to that. I'd like to get
Okay.
through these first, if I could.
The potential bike skills course,
Right, that was something that was brought up at our last meeting. I don't know how the commission feels on that. This is a location that could be considered.
I feel that this is, the Civic Center is not the best location for that. It should be some other place.
All right.
And developed, visually, I think it's a more rural type look than this urban park would,
Okay.
it wouldn't be appropriate.
That's fine. That's fine, we can easily remove that.
Well, I'm just one guy, I don't know
I
what the,
understand. Is there consensus on that?
I agree, yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Down in the southeast corner, I am suggesting that the master plan reflect the thought process of encouraging a connection south to the Tart Trail, following along the Titus Street to 8th Street, and then working with the city at the cemetery property to get over to Carson's Road as an area that's been considered by Tart for a potential connection. And going on from there, I've recommended a consideration for outdoor pickleball courts to the west of the existing basketball courts. This clearing currently has 2 trees within it, otherwise it is open to any canopy. Those trees are sugar maple, I think about 10 to 12 inch caliber trees. They would have to be removed, but the main trees left over from the days of the fairground would now have to be removed to facilitate 4 pickleball courts at that location. And it's just south of the restroom facility. The multi-purpose field in the center, I basically have put some dimensions to the aspect of what can be utilized out there for different types of field sport activities. The notch in it is specifically where there's an existing light pole, and I'm assuming that that's probably not something we're going to remove in the very near future or relocate, but we still have the ability to put in 3 rugby courts or courses, fields in there. We have the ability to do a football field, and we did label over on the far left side of the drawing some different field measurements of different types of sport activities that this multi-purpose field could be used for. And just want to put the dimensions down to give you some idea what the 370 by 650 area could accommodate. So we did recommend considering enhancing this area as a multi-purpose sports field, and even considering perhaps in the future doing some additional lighting to facilitate those activities. Yes, sir.
does the location of the multipurpose field there imply the elimination of ball field number 2?
The infield has already been removed in ball field number 2, the diamond dust infield.
Ball field number 2?
You're talking
Oh,
field.
2, I'm sorry, no, I'm sorry, I'm looking at, no, it does not.
Okay, so
It does
so
not.
they could coexist?
They can coexist, they just can't play at the same time, obviously.
Right.
And ball field number 2 does not have a permanent home run fence, a temporary fence, which allows the flexibility of the turf in that area. I'm sorry, I was thinking of the field to the south of that.
Okay.
And I'm also assuming that the existing chain link fences for ball field number 4, is it right? The large field?
5.
Ball field number 5, the large baseball field, where we have removed the infield, that those backstops and everything, chain link fence investment stays in place.
Russ, I'm
Should the
sorry.
demand ever come forth?
I misunderstood you. You're talking about the backstop on field 1. My apologies.
To the very south end, the large
Correct.
field? Yes. Yeah, the large field at the south end of the multi-purpose area on the master plan, I would suggest we retain the investment in the chain link fencing should we choose to reintroduce the large field activity on this property in the future. So my dimensions are based on retaining that investment, not removing it. The south property line is still a recommendation of a shorter fence, whether it's chain link or otherwise, be retained, and that all the fencing on the very west side of the property, which backs up to other uses, I was suggesting leaving that as it is. Also, yes, sir?
You don't have a new sidewalk along the north part of Titus Street? Outside in the right-of-way of Titus Street? Or does this show a sidewalk?
There is not a sidewalk. The curb for Titus Street on the Civic Center side of the property, within our property, is approximately 3 feet from the fence, or less. And so there's physically not any room for a public sidewalk on Titus Street on our side of the property.
Well, if it went right, you could do it if it went right up to the curb, though.
Correct.
And move the fence, maybe.
Move the fence, that's correct, that could be done. And what we have recommended is basically allowing the loop trail to work as the sidewalk for the west side of Titus Street. By accessing from the southeast corner, it has 2 openings on the east side, the current fencing does, and the northeast corner also is a primary access for the Titus Street, west side traffic. I did recommend extending a loop on the northeast corner of the property for the walking trail. I don't know if you've noticed walking it. It identifies on the signs it's 5,150 feet in length, which is shy of a mile. The mile is 5,280 feet. I actually went out and rode it with my measuring wheel, and it's very close to what the sign says. So creating a little additional loop on the northeast corner of the property for a trail, we could make it exactly 1 mile, should that be a desire for the community in the future. As I was walking my measuring wheel on this, I was asked by several people why I was doing it. I explained why I was doing it. They said, who cares whether it's exactly a mile or not?
Runners.
So that may not be a very high priority. We also identified the recommendation in our discussions last month that should the Oak Park School ever become available, that it be considered for potential expansion of the property and could become a potential community rec center. We also identified as a very high priority a need to create a sidewalk linkage from the property line of the Civic Center along Civic Center Drive to the west to connect to Garfield Avenue sidewalk in front of Oak Park School and along the north property line of Oak Park School. And so that's identified on this master plan as a consideration. We also identified the screening of the facilities maintenance parking lot, the former tennis courts, as long as facilities maintenance is retained on property to try and screen visually some of the impact of the storage of equipment. And then we identified as an overall goal to ultimately relocate facilities maintenance to a different property and reduce the physical impact on this property of maintenance equipment. We did have some discussions about outdoor water-related activity and a potential splash pad. And I also received some questions as to what is a splash pad. I identified that the village of Kingsley has a splash pad, and this is their splash pad. It's approximately 40 by 40 within one of their small parks right on Bronson Street. The building in the backdrop is the new Village Hall and Library. And it's basically in this case, 2 to 3 structures and a sensor on it. You go push that sensor, the water comes on, it's on a timer, and then it goes off unless somebody goes back over to the sensor and reactivates it. But water parks can be quite extensive. Here's some examples of different types of graphics of splash parks, I should say, not water parks. And it all comes down to what degree and what level you would want to consider for the investment in this location. And the location that I have recommended is the area directly west of the current pool in a green open area. And let me go back.
Russ,
Right up, yes, sir.
regarding the splash pad,
Sure.
I like it a lot. My question is, do you have any kind of numbers that would tell us what the operating costs are for a splash pad, especially on city water?
Sure. I don't, but that's something that we should investigate. If you want that as a potential consideration, I'd be happy to try and assemble something There's obviously an investment cost, and there's an ongoing maintenance cost with utilities, especially city water.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, there's something that has a specific time frame in which it's operable. And I was also recommending that if a splash pad is created in this location, that we also put an outdoor drinking fountain for the walkers and one down at the ground level for the dogs, the canines.
Oh, how nice.
That would help facilitate and provide a better service for our residents. So that was part of that package with the splash pad. This would require, obviously running a water line, running appropriate drainage lines to deal with the water, and some facilities do some filtration and recycling instead of constantly bringing in fresh water. So that requires a pump house structure, et cetera, and all that is a factor into the cost for such a facility.
Commissioner Dwyer?
Yeah, Russ, you've gone all the way around. Are you done with this page? All right, just a couple of comments and some questions. I don't know how you take all the different opinions and put them all together to come up with one answer. Just to be a little different, I, for one, really don't object to chain link fences. I've used the walking path here on a pretty regular basis, and I do think that we need some separation for children, for dogs, for just some way to keep things inside the Civic Center property and keep traffic out. Down in the lower right-hand column, you've got expand play area and new equipment. Just one comment I would have about that is Kids Cove is very valuable. It's a great place. I used to use it when my kids were of that age. But those trees there, it's a really nice stand of trees.
It's a beautiful stand of trees.
I would suggest that maybe we'd be better off if we need new equipment, that maybe we could incorporate that into Kids Coves and leave those trees alone.
That is an excellent suggestion. I think that one of the things we're going to find over time is that the current facilities at Kids Cove are getting outdated and no longer meeting the safety standards for play equipment, because they're constantly improving those standards, and that maybe the better way to represent future play equipment is to basically utilize the space of Kids Cove as it exists, which is basically an open area without a lot of tree canopy.
Right.
And not put new facilities within the tree canopy.
Right.
And I'd be happy to do that.
All right, and one more question I have. At one of our study sessions, I think it was Kim Moore, came up with just a possibility, I don't think she's put any study into it, of modifying the outer wall of the pool. And I guess on your drawing here, it would be the northeast wall.
That's correct, yes.
And then putting some sort of a concrete pad out there so parents could sit out there in good weather, and then maybe locating a splash pad over there. Well, I'm interested in your opinion.
That's where I originally had it. I originally had the splash pad incorporated as a patio adjoining the pool facility on the northeast corner, wrapping around the northwest corner of that building, of the pool. And the more I thought about it, the aspect, folks coming for a splash pad aren't necessarily going to be going through the pool to access it. And with the pool, you have to have controlled access. So coming in from the outside from a splash pad isn't something that's going to work either from the standpoint of control. So I took it away from the physical adjacency of the building for that purpose, for the splash pad.
I understand.
It does not mean it couldn't still be an outdoor patio related to the pool, but it would have to be enclosed to maintain control.
Right. Okay, thank you.
And I'd be happy to add that if the commission would like to consider that as an option. Any other comments? If not, we did make some recommendations on this particular sheet as to what would happen if the community decided that we should invest in additional pool space and utilize the current Easling pool as a backbone. And in looking at the layout of the structure and some of the components around it, it looked to me like we could expand into the areas of orange there to create different venues inside the building for aquatics. I am not an interior aquatics expert by any imagination, but we could have some locker room expansion here, and we could have perhaps 2 different types of indoor pool areas in addition to the easing with this type of footprint change. And it would require a consideration of reducing the structure where facilities maintenance currently exists, because with any expansion of the pool facility, we are going to have to start grabbing space for parking cars. And if yesterday's senior expo was any indication of how jammed our facility can be with cars, it was a classic. So that was the recommendation bringing forth here, is that the facilities maintenance building would be reduced in size, still facilitate the ground, assuming it's moved off-site, still retain a portion of the building for maintenance purposes, screen an enclosure, fenced-in yard on the south side of it for the outdoor equipment they do need, and reduce the impact, but utilize the expansion capability of both parking and the building for this venue, should the community desire that in the future. I just wanted to show an example of what could be, should that be the route that the community wants to go, and this is just an option to consider. I didn't put it on the main master plan as of this point, because I considered it an option. Comments?
Yeah, I like the way, I like that's the way you're thinking, and certainly looks feasible. Doesn't quite look big enough to expand the pool to a 50-meter pool.
Right. Going in the northwest direction, it probably could be pushed further if it needed to be, from a footprint standpoint, but going northeast is, you're running into the loop trail system.
Right, and that nobody wants to walk right next to the corner of a building.
That's correct. So it's something to consider and can be, in the file, so to say, as a consideration, but may not be a priority. Yes, sir.
Russ, what are you envisioning as your recommended master plan document? One sheet like this?
One sheet like that ultimately, and then there will be a written text with inserts like this as options to consider.
Okay, thanks.
So any other comments regarding this idea? The next.
Well, did you have, not on the building expansion, but on the location of the pickleball courts?
Mm-hmm.
So this is an alternative or in addition?
This could be a future location for additional pickleball courts. It's not, at this point, it's not an alternative as long as the space is being used for parking cars and equipment.
Right.
But should facilities manager go away from that location and not need to use the former tennis courts, I would have the commission consider, do they want to reintroduce tennis courts back into that area, or tennis courts and pickleball courts, or just pickleball courts? The area could be refurbished to facilitate it.
So you're thinking that the ones by Titus Street might be more quickly achieved?
Exactly. There's something that could be achieved almost immediately. This would be long-term, and we don't know, 15, 20 years, if the demand's going to be there for pickleball, it would be something totally different. But the hard surface court games could still occur in this area.
Thank you.
In the future. The next sketch is just showing a what-if scenario. If the Oak Park property, school property, TCAPS property were to become available. I did a little research of what size our community rec centers across the state, and they vary anywhere from 30,000 square foot to 90,000 square foot structures. This is in red here is showing approximately 60,000 square feet. And it would need to be able to modulate along the Garfield Avenue because we are in a residential neighborhood. It should not be a big, massive structure over imposing the residential character of the area. And this would be something that I would assume that we would tuck the parking on the backside and create another bridge and link it into the parking that exists on the east side of the current walkway.
Just repeat for me, how many square feet does that building comprise?
If I recall correctly, it's about 60,000
Okay,
square feet
just the building.
building. Yeah. And the intent here was just to show a what-if scenario, and there would be a need, in my opinion, to try and link the parking with the existing parking within the Civic Center physically. And so we're showing that that would require going through the earth mound, creating another bridge, and creating a physical link as a recommendation. And then the last concept that I have for you is the entry road concept. Very high on the priority list of both the public and this commission was the physical linkage of the sidewalk from the Civic Center to Garfield Avenue. So I created a little sketch here that shows how that could happen. It would require cooperation between the City of Traverse City, TCAPS, Grand Traverse County, and the adjoining property owners to the north, in my opinion, to make this happen. Physically, the school is still in use, not necessarily as an elementary school, but I believe, I'm not sure what the proper terminology is, special ed, or there's still some educational programs going on there. I happened to observe yesterday when I was out on property that there were a series of about 8 or 9 cars lined up on Civic Center Drive waiting to pick up children just before you enter into out of the gate off the playground, just before you enter into the Civic Center property. So, and I've seen school buses waiting in that same location. So I'm suggesting the consideration of a drop-off zone. In other words, pull over, have a 10-foot strip to get the car out of the traffic lane. They can wait for a period of time for pickup or drop-off for children, and then create the sidewalk linkage joining that. This would necessitate relocating the existing fence that encloses the playground at TCAPS Oak Park School, and therefore would require some cooperation of all the parties involved. And this also is a recommendation to adjust the radius on the right turn off from Garfield into Civic Center Drive, which right now is a very tight radius, and most large vehicles jump the curb coming in. And so the right turn in should be enhanced if it can be. So this is a recommendation that basically says, here's a piece of paper, an idea. If the parties can come together and determine how it can happen, this is a starting point. This is a recommendation of how it could happen should all the parties come together on it. Those are my recommendations. I'd be happy to now move forward with your thought processes on comments that I've received tonight, and bring back a master plan recommendation next month.
Well, in an effort to provide the feedback that you're looking for on the sidewalk, my personal experience is that I rarely see people, not rarely, I seldom see people walking in and out along that routing. It is convoluted with, I tend to go in there when the buses are lined up for pickup. There is enough room to get by. It's not a great place to walk. Maybe people don't walk there because there's no walkway. It would seem like that would be a natural flow for people from that neighborhood to walk in there, but I just don't see it. I see a lot more people walking along Titus Street on the south end where there's no sidewalk on either side,
Right.
because there's a bus stop down near that corner, and I see a lot of people walking down there, and that's not very good because they're walking in the roads. So with the difficulty of the sidewalks and the fact that I personally don't see that many people, I'm not, I wouldn't be terribly interested in that sidewalk up there. I really like the vision on the new buildings. Clearly, while in the same meeting we're arguing about closing the pool and building a new pool, that's oil and water that isn't mixing, but I like the work you've done here, and it gives me hope that there might be some potential there with the Y running their campaign and yet millions of dollars away from there. I see other potentials of partnerships and conversations that haven't been initiated yet and probably won't be. So I like the work you've done. The big one that you've done here with all this stuff, boy, that's going to be tough for us to come down and argue about every little point on that and hash that out. I think what you've done is, I think your process is that you've taken all the inputs and done what you think works best here based on the inputs, because we narrowed our list of 100 down to about 70 the other night, which I know wasn't the clear guidance that you needed. So I like this. I think it's a great place to begin the conversation. I'm not quite sure how the conversation proceeds, but I like the work you've done.
Well, I guess one of the questions I would like to ask of the commission, the master plan final document that you received, do you want the building expansion shown on that core plan, or do you want it shown as an inset or a side document on the overall plan? I guess I wasn't sure what the consensus feeling was of this commission relative to expanding Easling Pool.
Seeing, in that case, we don't own the property, so I would rather have it as an addition or an insert, you say.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, I think it might be a little presumptious of us to, on the main plan, to have this property that we...
You're speaking to the Oak Park property.
That's correct.
I understand. I agree. I guess my question is to the expansion around Easling Pool. Would you like me to show those building envelope growth aspects as a dotted line or something on the overall plan, and then still provide the inset in the document? It really doesn't make any difference how I present it from my standpoint. I just want to make sure that you're comfortable with it.
My opinion as a guy who would just love to see a giant pool is that if we put those kinds of things in there, I'm afraid that will invalidate the rest of the plan, going, we're just dreaming, so we're not going to do that, we're not going to do any of it. So I would prefer to see, as a personal preference, a fairly detailed, a more detailed plan on what could happen as an addendum or an annex, not as part of the main plan, but this is the dreaming big chapter, this is what we're shooting for today.
Yes, sir.
The other part of that sheet, though, that shows removal of the maintenance building and additional pickleball or tennis courts, I'd kind of like to see that on the main thing, sure. Because if we can get facilities to move...
Right, and this is what happens with the property.
Right.
Okay.
I support that idea.
That's fine.
Russ, the county board did vote to, thanks to your generosity in doing this master plan, did vote to set money aside to implement the master plan. Where would you start?
I was debating in my mind as I was putting this together, where would be the best place to go, and I really think that the best place to go is deal with that perimeter fencing somehow. I think that's the biggest impact visually, aesthetically, that can be done for the money. And the aspect that should we choose to replace the fencing with something else, that's pretty costly. But if that is the choice, then we have to do it in segments, figure out how far the money can go. And if we, I think there's consensus that there should be some type of barrier on the property, and it still could be hedges. I'm pretty good with thorny bushes if I have to be, and we can have defensible plant landscaping in there if we need to. But an enclosure, a sense of enclosure is still important. It definitely doesn't need to be 6 feet tall, and we're not there to represent that anymore, in my opinion. So I was hoping that we could do something relative to the front door, the front street impact of improving the looks of this property. Yes, sir.
This is probably for Jason, is the location of that light pole that intrudes into the proposed multipurpose field important for it to be at that location, or could it be moved further to the east?
Further to the... It is important for it to be at that location because it's the lights on that are directionally, or they're pointed directly at the home plate and right down third baseline of the softball fields.
Okay.
The lights that are there, you also see a light post. If you go directly east of that light post, you'll see one just to the west of ball field number 6, and then one to the north of ball field number 6. Those two are strategically positioned as well to properly illuminate those fields, because those are our two softball fields, and they play sometimes as late as 11:30 at night. So it'd be challenging to move those, not to mention those posts. I'm not sure where they originally came from, but those are four of the tallest posts I've seen, tallest wood posts I've seen, and anytime we have a light outage in one of those, it's a very costly. In fact, I'm waiting for a quote right now from Danny Brown. I would expect it to be $1,500 just to change 4 light bulbs on that thing. So to think about moving the pole would be very significant, not to say that it couldn't be identified in this plan, but, you know, in thinking about moving it, a different possibility for lighting at that field would be beneficial, and it may be something in the future to pursue grant funding for. There are several grants available through a variety of lighting companies to not only upgrade lights, to make them more useful and more eco-friendly. So it's a possibility. It could be identified there as a future funding, future grant opportunity.
Okay. Mr. Maxborough?
Russ, the marker tree.
Yes, I'm sorry, I skipped right over that. I did recommend a walking trail be created to link from the walkway that goes from the concession stands between ball fields 1 and 2, I believe, going north, that then there'd be a new trail that goes over to the marker tree and then link up to the loop, walking loop. And that would just, it would not necessarily be an 8-foot wide asphalt path, but something more of a 5-foot width. That is comfortable for 2 people to walk side by side, and it's more of an informal loop within the park for an opportunity for an educational venue with this tree. I also want to let you know that I have approached some friends in the Conservation District for the Grand Traverse Band to do some research for me on that tree. I really want to know what they can determine from speaking with the elders and some historical research on the significance of this tree.
You know, the other thing about that tree, you mentioned that Facilities is putting stuff around it.
Yes.
And I haven't been out there in a while. Jason, is that stuff still around that tree? Do you know?
Yeah, there's a variety of supplies around that tree. They've actually created, and they did this several years ago, so this isn't new, some concrete barriers that have created little bays for diamond dust, for wood chips, and a variety of other landscaping supplies that are utilized at the Civic Center.
I would love to see that stuff not be around that tree.
Move it.
Absolutely. I
I would agree.
I grew up over there and climbed on that tree before it was fenced.
I'm sorry, I did overlook that, but that is a recommendation. There are some asphalt trails leading down toward the tree from the north, a walking loop that could link into this. But I just wanted to have some research done determining the real historic value, so we'd know what proper signage to consider.
Yeah, and you know, maybe we could work with the band and other granting agencies to provide facilities so that that stuff can go somewhere else.
Sure. Thank you.
I suppose we could package this all as one thing when we figure out exactly which parts and pieces we want, and then try to sell the whole thing, achieve grant money as one project. Or we could parcel it all out and prioritize, and when year after year, we put budget money in for this one project and then this one project, and this becomes a 10-year plan. I'm going to guess that second way is probably going to be more successful, but I'm not an expert on the funding aspect of that.
That's the most logical way to go through an implementation process. Any other comments?
Yeah, thanks again for all your work on this.
You're welcome.
Yeah, great job.
Thank you.
This is when I used to jump the fence.
All right, moving on to new business, community collaboration grant match.
As I discussed in our last commission meeting, we're working towards, the Community Collaboration Committee is working towards a needs analysis associated with determining, I guess, the recreational needs of all households within the TCAPS attendance area, and through a variety of different, sending out surveys to determine the needs of a variety of demographics in our group. In order to fulfill our obligation in order for our collaboration committee to fulfill the obligation to Rotary Charities, we have to come up with $1,250. We do have commitments from the city of Traverse City as well as TCAPS to donate that, or to contribute to that $1,250. And I would ask this commission to approve a contribution of up to $425. The reason I say $425 is we have asked 2 additional communities to help out, East Bay Township and Garfield Township, because they are part of that committee. And if we get word that they're interested in contributing, that number would obviously drop because we would split that 1,255 ways versus 3. But we do have commitments from TCAPS as well as the city of Traverse City to do this. As I mentioned last month, a lot of the data that will be found, or a lot of the data through this needs analysis will be utilized for our master plan and a variety of the different plans that you've identified in your strategic plan.
All right, can I have that motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved by Dorn, seconded by Dwyer, as printed there in the packet, to contribute up to $425. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is the Driftwood Palace.
Yes. I read with great interest the letter from the young man who built it. And I see no reason why we have to require them to take that out. So I'm going to move that we leave the Driftwood Palace there. In place.
We have a second?
I'll support.
Supported by Taylor. Discussion. Commissioner Karstens?
I would agree, it has a tremendous charm. However, the letter also indicates that he'd like to continue building, and as much fun as that may be, it's not on property that he should be doing that. So to leave their handiwork, there's an artistic element to it, and it blends right in with everything else that's there, that's fine, but I think we need to be clear in our message that for him to continue doing that, I don't think it's the right thing to do. So that's a concern of mine.
Commissioner Dwyer?
I'm a mildly concerned, and only mildly concerned with our liability here. And I wonder if there's some way that if we left it up, if we could get some help from Mr. Cooney about some small, not very obtrusive sign, just warning people that, you're on your own if you want to monkey around in here. I've been out and seen the thing. It's pretty cool. It really is. And there's not like nails sticking out all over the place or any real obvious danger. So I agree. I think maybe we ought to try to
Aesthetically,
leave it alone.
it's special.
It is.
Yeah.
Jason, what do you think about liability?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm torn on this issue. Given, if it were up to me, I'd say keep it up. This is exactly the type of activity we want to see in our parks. This is where dreams grow. These kids have done a great job building this little community, and it is very aesthetically pleasing, and it certainly doesn't prohibit any type of activity going on in the park. That being said, it was directed by me after discussing with this commission to talk with Cooney, and Cooney did raise some risk management issues. I would like to err on the side of recreation and say, yeah, let's keep this thing standing, realizing that we're willing to take on that additional liability. We're willing to take on the risk associated with it. If this commission feels that is appropriate. That being said, if this commission is willing to let this continue to stand, taking on that additional liability, it changes my job with this to ensure that we can shore up and further minimize any type of liability with this. knowing that we're still taking on more than if we were to tear it down. So I leave it to the commission. I think this is what we want to see happen in our parks. I don't know that it's the safest thing, but parks aren't the safest places in the world, to be honest with you. Not that they're inherently dangerous, but what else could go on in any park? So this is up to the commission.
Mr. McSpadden?
We have a skate park where we allow children to use their bicycles and skateboards without helmets. And I think that's more of a danger and more of a liability than this, I call it a Driftwood Palace. I consider it a work of art. I think it fits in very well with the park. And I just don't feel that it's, I think it was a form of recreation. I think it still is. It's harming no one. So I'm going to vote yes on the motion.
Commissioner Doria?
I wonder if, this is a motion to not do something. Do we really need a motion for this?
Well, we previously said that we would take it down.
Okay, so we're going to undo that.
Yeah, so it's really rescinding. We didn't specifically have a motion but it was part of the conversation about the property line and all that stuff. Commissioner McCallion.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Most importantly, I wanted to hear the director's recommendation, so I wish to support the director's recommendation. And also, Jason, thank you. You clarified that you would follow up on liability issues and re-present it to the board if need be. If you determine there are liability issues that we need to be aware of in the future, that's what I thought I heard you say, and that's why I'm comfortable in supporting this motion.
Mr. Carstens.
Just a question. The letter that the young man wrote, doesn't he imply that he'd like to continue the building? And is that okay?
I've only read this once, so I'd have to reread it.
That was not part of my motion. I'm just saying
Right.
leave the structure that's there.
Yeah. And I don't have, anyway.
Yeah, actually, he does state that I was looking forward to building again this year and had every kayak trip planned out until August.
So,
Have you conversed with this guy? I'm sorry.
No, I have not spoken directly with this person. My initial discussion was with another child not associated with the group of kids that signed off on this. So this is the first time I've heard from the Quinlan. No, I've not had any discussion or any correspondence with either of these two kids that signed this.
Maybe some friendly conversation along the lines of the commission's willing to leave it there. We're hoping it doesn't expand. Maybe that would be valuable.
I would be comfortable with that.
All right, any further discussion? The motion then, I'll word it as, if you're okay with this, is to rescind our previous decision to remove the Driftwood Palace. That wording be adequate?
Sorry, one more time.
To rescind our earlier action to remove the Driftwood Palace.
I'm good with that.
All right, then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, director's report.
Before I start my report, I just want to commend this commission for erring on the side of recreation in that decision. I think it's tough as a director to see something that's so intrinsic to my industry happening in our parks and happening in a positive manner. I sometimes feel like a phony sitting here and giving my disclaimer that I'm required to give about the risk associated with something like this. So I just want to commend the commission for taking a small but a risk with liability in allowing this to stand within our parks. So thank you for that. I also wanted to update the commission. Last month you saw that Kim was not here. Kim is not here again this month, and actually today I found out that Kim's planned due date to return from a leave of absence was scheduled to be May 23rd, and it's actually been pushed back now to approximately June 6th. So this is, I just wanted to inform the commission of this because there are some things that this commission asked for us to complete last month that unfortunately have not been able to be completed. And frankly, leading up through Kim's first day back, as well as probably for the next week, some of the work that comes out of our department is going to be stymied to some degree. We're kind of at a challenging time right now because we're wrapping up our spring swim lessons, and several weeks ago should have started working on our summer lessons. So we're actually in the process, myself, and we've had I'd like to commend a few of our staff members for stepping up to the plate and filling in Kim's absence with some of the responsibilities in order for us to move forward. But it has slowed the work on the strategic plan, and it has slowed some of the work that I've had to do as director because some changes have needed to be made in order for the pool to be operated safely and for us to continue to see positive growth in the pool. So, my next item is the strategic plan update. You'll notice on the strategic plan that's included in your packet, I've completed the objective to explore a plan for executing a needs analysis, and actually that could be expanded now that the needs analysis is beginning. Our community collaboration committee met, and we've put together a survey that's going to be going out. It's going to be done via SurveyMonkey, the same tool that we utilized for the baseball program. It's going to be sent out to every household in the TCAPS attendance area. It's going to be sent to a variety of other mailing lists and things like that our community collaboration committee have put together in order to truly understand the recreational needs of the citizens in Grand Traverse County. Questions are going to be asked related to, questions are being asked related to what recreation needs people have now, what needs are not being met, and if needs are being met, to what degree of quality are they being met. It's right now that survey tool is being tested by the Rotarians. I made a presentation to them on Tuesday. The link was sent to all Rotarians for them to test it, give comments on the device or on the survey tool. And then once we receive those comments, it'll be mailed out via email to TCAPS the first week in June before school's out of session. So we are moving forward with that. I hope to have some results later this summer with results of that, as well as a survey going out to all program directors that we have in our community right now that are offering recreation programs. So I'm going to skip over the project list. Work session meetings. I just want to remind the commission that we do have a work session scheduled on June 2nd. I've asked Ann Conklin to join us. She's the former director of Canton Leisure Services, and they implemented during her tenure as director a full-scale cost recovery system, something that we talked about in our last work session. And she's now the executive, I think COO, I think is her title, of the Michigan Recreation and Park Association. So she's going to be joining us next at our work session to discuss the process that Canton Township, a gold medal, one of maybe one or two gold medal parks and recreation communities in the state of Michigan. And she's going to discuss that with us and kind of lead us in that direction. I've been asked, as my next point, I've been asked by the Conservation District to invite this commission to do an orientation and take a tour of the Natural Education Reserve with so many questions we've had lately and so many things on the agenda recently associated with the NER. The Conservation District would like to invite you out as a group to do a tour and to have an orientation to the NER as well as the Conservation District. There are some relationships with the Conservation District that don't just apply to Parks and Recreation. They have a variety of different relationships and do a variety of different work for other boards and commissions within Grand Traverse County. So I think that would be a benefit. If no one has any concerns with that, I'll have Marilyn work with the NER to possibly put a meeting together for possibly late June to offset and put it towards the end of the month, because we will be meeting early in the month for our work session if the commission doesn't have a problem with that.
I have no objection to that.
Finally, one of the other things, I guess one of the last things I wanted to bring up, and this is kind of challenging to figure out how to pick this, how to find a number and discuss it well or properly discussed that with the commission, but I kind of wanted to give the commission a sense of how things are going in the department, and I realized that our budget numbers are often key to that. So what I did is, I've been working on this, and it's certainly not a perfect tool, where we were at this time last year. So as of May 19th, 2010, our department had expended, including pool utilities, $313,954. Our revenues at this time last year were $317,017.87. So we were actually $3,000, our revenues were $3,000 greater than expenditures at this time last year. This year, we're still on a very similar pace. We're not doing as well because our expenditures are $237,384. And our revenue this year is $226, giving us a difference of $10,528. Our expenditures are greater than our revenues, but a lot of that has to do with a $50,000 decrease in our allocation from the general fund, and we've budgeted to spend $20,000 less from our Parks and Recreation Commission fund balance than we did last year. So putting those numbers back into the equation, right now we're actually at approximately 18% versus being at 1% of our, we're on pace to do very similar numbers to what we did last year. I'd be happy to explain this to any commissioner that has any questions after the meeting or down the road. But looking at our budget numbers this year, we're on pace to have a record number like we did last year within our pool and within our Parks and Recreation budget.
Mr. Maxwell, you had a question?
I do. Jason, when you say revenue, are you including general fund money as revenue?
That is included in the revenue, because I looked at all the revenues associated with the fund in 2010 and 2011.
Thank you.
And have taken into consideration the decrease in 2011.
All right, thank you for the report. All right, we'll go blowing right by the second public comment based on no public and notices and commissioner comments. Jason, would the June 2nd study session be 6 o'clock in the Civic Center meeting room?
Yes, it will.
Okay, I would appreciate it if you would think, again, take yourself back to the cost recovery discussion that we had and think of some good questions for Ms. Conklin?
Conklin, C-O-N-K-L-I-N.
All right, so that we can take maximum advantage of her expertise while she's here. Any other comments? All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Doran, seconded by McKellier.
Sorted by McKellier.
Trying to hurry myself out of this. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned at 8:26. Thank you.